Hmm.
Because if it was me, I would not have. I thought they booked it backwards.
Hmm.
I thought they should have had the last match maybe not be the War Games thing, but just him and Jericho in the cage, just a singles. You know what I mean?
Right.
And have something like that, because you've gone through all these different, all those, what was it called? The five fit. What is it?
God, what was it? Yeah, the Trials of Jericho.
Okay, yeah. You had him go through that and all these other things and all these matches. It would have been great if they built that to like a cage match, like we've done every other gimmick,
Hmm.
and instead they had the War Games cage where Jericho took the big bump, and then you have like it wasn't this match with them a regular match, like a
Yeah,
straight
it
up,
was a regular
except
match.
Jericho would have to leave, right?
Yeah, yeah, and then they had the Nick Gage. This one was a regular match, but he
Right.
goes through Nick Gage,
Yep.
in a hardcore deathmatch style match. He goes through Guerrera where he had to do an aerial move, um, and one match where he couldn't use the Judas. No, that was the other match. The last trial was he couldn't use the Judas effect.
Right.
Like, yeah, it was a weird kind of booking, but yeah, you're right. It's kind of backwards.
Yeah, I would have just liked. I didn't mind anything they did with it. But I would have had the last match be in a cage and then give the stipulation of if Jericho loses, he's out, because then you can't have any interference. And it's
Right.
like it's almost like a certain that you're going to see a real winner.
Hmm.
And of course, whatever kind of shenanigans ensues.
Yeah.
um, but nonetheless, I thought that would have been a better selling point than just a straight up match. And they seem to do that a little bit. They seem to like, go up like to a big blow off match and then kind of come back with a single one on one. It's like once you go into gimmick matches, wrestling booking. Pat Patterson used to always say, it's like why are you doing this? You're giving the fans everything, and so when you get to the blow off, you have nothing left to give them. So then that's when people start coming up with hokey shit or shit that just isn't as good as it needs to be for the level that you've built it up to. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It
you
does
know what I mean?
because I've heard on Raven's podcast he talked about working with a couple people up in Washington or Oregon or something like that.
Yes.
Portland. It was Portland. It was
Yep.
Portland. And
Yep.
he's like, yeah, I want to do cage match. He goes, okay, why? And he says the reason. He goes, okay, so what's next? And it's
Right.
like, that's a really good point. What do you do after that?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Because the whole purpose, especially back in the older days, and I know we're not in the old days, but it all made sense and there was always a reason. The reason of the cage was to help the baby face get a finality in a way. Like the
mhm,
heel would either run away, so you'd get counted out or something. Like if you were booking the Garden, like when Bruno Sammartino was the champ at the Garden for all those years, consecutively, and he sold it out.
mhm,
Bruno would wrestle. Maybe he'd have you know, a match where the wrestler left and there was a count out. Like, you know what I mean? He fled the building,
mhm,
just went to
right.
the locker room, count out, fuck. And then the next match happens, the ref takes a DQ, boom.
Mm.
And then, you have a no DQ match, and then finally, after all these things, somebody interferes. You finally say the cage. You can't leave. Nobody could come in or out. No disqualification, right? So then the heel gets all those ways that he cheated
Mhm,
for the advantage
mhm.
get taken away. So now Jericho has him in the cage, in the confines of the steel cage, brother. He can't run, he can't hide.
Yeah,
Nobody could come and help him, and then
yeah.
that would have been a perfect
A
little
send
thing
off.
for him.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But it made MJF a star,
It did. It certainly did. Absolutely.
and now he's elevating Brian Pillman Jr.
Yeah.
with some great heel promos.
Yeah,
uh,
he's great with that stuff, I'll tell you.
so it helped elevate MJF, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it
Uh,
definitely is.
then we get CM Punk versus Darby Allin, and there's one thing you mentioned, the 1-2-3 Kid. They did a couple spots where they paid homage to Bret Hart and the 1-2-3 Kid. Some people were saying copying. It wasn't copying. You could tell.
That's not copying. It's just
Punk
it's
paying homage.
yeah,
That's all it is. Because he called the whole match. You could tell.
right, yeah. But even though like people are just so weird about things. Like I used to do in a lot of my matches. I used to do Flair Steamboat with like I know this was never televised, but myself and Chris Candido. When he was Skip and I was Aldo, we used to open up the B towns, the smaller venues, on tour for the WWE, and we'd have a singles match, and they would allow us to go 10, 15 minutes
Mhm.
opening match, and
Mhm.
we would literally say to each other backstage, let's do Flair Steamboat. And we'd literally go out there and do Flair Steamboat. But we weren't doing Flair Steamboat. We were doing us, just incorporating a lot of that psychology and maybe some of the moves and so forth and some of the counters. But isn't that all of wrestling? If you
Right.
really watch wrestling, it's a lot of it, like, the Shawn Michaels flip that he does into the corner. That's a take on the Flair bump, and Kurt
Mhm.
Hennig used to take one. Pat Patterson used to take that bump as well. That little flip into the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to do that because I was ripping Sean off in ECW. I used to do that all the time. So, you can't say that it's like, it's just, I don't know. To me, it's just fun to do. And I don't know why there would be any slack on it. It's just wrestlers having a good time. You can tell when they do that, they're having fun.
See, and this is the weird thing about wrestling as well. It's almost the only form of entertainment that gets that negativity. If a band goes out and plays a cover, they don't get that call, the pushback. If an
Right.
actor goes out and, let's say, mimics something that maybe De Niro did in the early stages, they don't get that flack. Just
Yeah.
wrestlers.
Yeah, that's very
And
true. I never thought of it like that.
and the Shawn and 1-2-3 Kids thing took place over 20 years ago,
Right.
almost 30
Yeah.
years ago at this point. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a good thing to pay homage to and call back
Oh,
to.
it certainly does. It certainly does. I think it's awesome. But it's almost like, like I don't know. It's just fans just look for anything these days. I'll tell you one of the things that, and I'm going to step off of schedule a bit, just because we're on this topic. But wrestling Twitter is probably one of the most crazy, nasty, negative places ever.
I
Um,
know. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's like if one person says something bad, or is perceived to say something bad, it's like you're spoken about so nasty, and they want to cancel you and stuff like that. So to me, I think fans are almost making wrestling harder
Mhm.
because you're saying you want this or you don't want that, and you're being so nasty and vocal about it. In some ways, like the top wrestlers won't pay attention to it.
Mhm.
They know better. Guys like me, guys like whomever's been around for 20 plus years, they know a little better.
Mhm.
But for a lot of the younger talent, I believe it gets in their head. I really believe that, and they get nervous. And I've heard a million times that guys are going to go out there and just try to get their shit in and try to look good because of what fans are say. That's one thing, man. I never ever in my history of my career gone out there worrying about what fans are going to think of this or that spot. I worried about and wanted the fans to just absolutely love the match and
Yeah.
popped for the match. That was my whole goal, was how did the whole thing come about? Like,
Mhm.
at the end product, the 1, 2, 3 happens. Was it a 3, 4 star match or was it a shitty match? You know what I
Right.
mean? That's
Yeah.
what I cared about, not because, he did the Brett and Owen or the Brett and Kid spot or something like that. You look at it as a final piece of work,
Right.
as far as the matches, and that's it's just we have to be a little more kind to one another and not look for always looking for the bad and just enjoy it, because right now wrestling is really making a comeback,
Mhm.
and I think this will continue to rise for a long time, at least a couple of years. I mean, this week we have I don't know when this will air, hopefully soon because it's time dated,
Mhm.
but the Arthur Ashe Stadium show is sold almost 20,200 already, and there's still 1,000 tickets left. They just opened up new seating
Right.
in New York. I mean, that's going to be as big as any house in North America this year.
Yep.
I mean, think about that. Other than like WrestleMania and Royal Rumble, But to have a TV taping draw, almost 21,000 fans, and you're the number 2 company, that means pro wrestling is doing pretty freaking good, and I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, it is. So to answer your question, this is
Sure.
going to be the fastest turnaround. I'm literally going to edit this tonight, so it goes up tomorrow. So
Nice.
the other part of it, kind of what you're referring to about wrestling fans, there's a joke that I saw, and it plays a little bit of truth, is no one hates wrestling more than wrestling fans.
Yep.
But with the negativity, I try to not play into that. I try with my Twitter account for the podcast and my personal one, the most you'll ever see me do that's negative is I might make a joke, but it's all in jest. It's not It's not like attacking somebody. I usually my opinion, I try to be more positive, especially to a lot of the guys. There's a guy that I'm actually going to talk to that's on the independent circuit that a lot of times I just like, hey man, I saw your character. Have you tried this? And he would try it, and he would just message me back like, "Oh man, that really worked," kind of thing. That's like the back and forth that I try to have, especially with the guys coming up, because I pay attention. We did interviews with a lot of independent wrestlers, so I try to pay attention to like what's going on and with their work and whatnot. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. It's a great experience for everyone included.
Yeah, I'd rather be a positive, and that's why like a lot of the times when I do outros is like what you like, just don't be a dick. Like,
right. Yeah.
Which I kind of stole from Wrestling with Regret, but it's legitimately the truth. Like,
yeah.
No, you don't have to be negative about anything like that.
Yeah, but unfortunately, like what happened, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened with Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah, I think that was more like a foot in the mouth situation for Tommy. But
it really was. It really was. And I did an interview yesterday for a pretty famous sports publication with Vince Russo. I think it's called Sportskeeda.
Yeah, I know them.
Yeah, I did their show last night, and they asked me about it, and I think, Tommy just was trying to protect Rick because that's what we do as wrestlers. And I don't think because we didn't hear any of the, it's not excusable, first and foremost, but I don't think, we didn't hear what that lady had to say. And she came off very compelling, right? The way the material came across. So it was like Dreamer talking how he talked, and then the lady coming across kind of hurt, or not kind of, she was hurt and expressing herself, and it was very impactful. It was very, very sad. You could tell she was tearing up. She was in pain, and but Dreamer never, he can never. I'm not sticking up for him, but you never see that other part because I never met this woman. I've never heard her story. So I think one of my things that I said was, if that was my wife or my daughter, I would be extremely, extremely pissed off. I think that's all because I didn't see it because Scott Hall and I sat in the front of the plane on purpose because we knew it was going to be one of those flights, and we just wanted to get some sleep. We wanted to take some pills and just knock ourselves out, and obviously Scott succeeded. And we sat on the front of the plane because we didn't want to get ribbed. Like, when you fall asleep, they'll cut your hair or shave your
eyebrows. Yeah.
So we sat in the front purposely. So I never even saw, and thankfully I'm glad I didn't see it, what happened with Flair. But it's just crazy how, the business has just become so weird, and I don't know, just crazy times. Like sometimes you can't even, I'm afraid to talk because I don't want to say anything incorrectly, because sometimes the way I say something or you may say something may not necessarily be, interpreted properly, and, it's just, you got to be careful. You got to be very careful.
And I don't know Tommy's history or anything like that, but
he's a great guy, 9 times out of 10, never did anything wrong, never did drugs. Just a stand-up guy, in the business. So
no, this wasn't a jab at Tommy at all. And I'm gonna preface this as I do know victims of sexual assault. I'm engaged to one.
Right.
What Tommy, in my opinion, came across is he might have been protecting Rick, But he also came across like some people I know that had been accused of something that they